Welcome to Open-E. This topic about the pass-through is going to be with VMware and ESX. So basically we're going to be showing about how to set up and configure the pass-through and also to be able to install the DSS V7 and to be able to use the pass-through device. We will cover the following topics. So we will be installing DSS V7 as a virtual storage appliance. Then we're going to be enabling the RAID controller as a pass-through device. And then we're going to add the RAID to the DSS V7. We'll show how to create the RAID unit, and also you could use the web GUI and or MSSM for Mega RAID Storage Manager or 3ware. LSI owns 3ware now, so I decided to show the 3ware instead because we have a previous webinar showing with the LSI RAID controller that Giannis performed, and I'll show you where that's at. Then we could check the performance from the console screen. So when I started into this, I used an old Supermicro server and it didn't work. So I couldn't figure out why, and I researched some documentation on VMware because a lot of our servers are used in labs being tested, so I couldn't really steal from one of them at that point in time. So I did this a couple of weeks ago and it wouldn't work. Come to find out that in the VMware documentation for the pass-through device is that you need a processor of substantial Intel Xeon 5500 or greater. Well, I had a free server, grabbed an Intel server, one of the Romleys, one of the recent ones that we recently got about a year ago, and it did have this processor, a greater size processor in it. So, at which point, I went to the BIOS settings in the Intel server. Now, some of the tie-in and Supermicros, you might have to go to a different area to enable this. So, I went in just to make sure that some of my settings were on, and I went into Advanced Processor Configuration. In here is where some were on by default, and some were not. So, what I did is I enabled, you could see the Intel hyper-threading tech that was enabled where the red arrows are, and I enabled the virtualization technology, and I also proceeded to do the direct IO and also the pass-through, so I can add memory for it as well. You might have different settings for your motherboard, so just research it. VMware has as well documented, so for the memory PCI devices, this will help you set your BIOS in your motherboard properly. So when you do this on your ESX, for mine was the ESX 5.1 that I set this for, you want to make sure that these settings are on and enabled. Okay, so now let's bring up the ESX. So the ESX that I have running now is on that Intel motherboard. I have just a regular disk to just install the ESX on. So here you'll see the data store. This is where my ESX 5.1 is installed. Now once I install this, I want to make sure that I'm updated to the latest releases. And here I'm seeing version right up here, ESXi 5.1.0, and of course the latest build. You can also go to Help and then basically go right down here to About VMware vSphere. So here you're seeing the same thing. So you want to make sure you're updated. And if you're not updated or you want to verify, you can just go to Help and then go check for updates on the web. And this will take you to a link to a VMware site where you can update your host. What I decided to do then is to upload the latest DSS V7. And where I placed this was you could place it in several different areas. If you notice here on my local disk where ESXi is installed, I can upload it here. So I can take it from my PC, I can upload the DSS directly from here. Here's the latest version, and I clicked right here on this icon where it says upload file. So this is where you select from your PC or somewhere, a map drive, and to upload the ISO image right here on the data store. That way when we create the virtual machine, we can select where we want to install from the ISO. Also, I took another DSS V7 system on our network and I created an NFS share. In here, I was able to load ISOs as well. So when we create the virtual machine, we can connect to this ISO to install DSS V7 and or V6. To find the latest version of DSS V7, they're right here on our website. If you see the screen right here where I just go to Products, and I can go to DSS, Open-E DSS V7, and right here on the right you say Download Trial, 60-day trial, and here you'll have the ISO image available. So the latest version right now that we have is, the way we write it so that way everybody understands, is version 7.00 up 10, and of course we have the build number, which is 7637. You can just click on the download file and then go ahead and proceed to put the files in the data stores that I pointed out in VMware. Okay, and then on top of this, I created an iSCSI target for VMware where I will be installing the DSS, carving out of here to install the virtual machine onto. If the purpose is, in this case, sometimes you might want to add another local SSD drive internally. So that way you keep everything internally into the ESX server. So you'll have the RAID controller, the drives, another SSD drive to use possibly for caching and or to install create from DSS. In this case, you can really do a lot in how to install DSS. And for this purpose, I'm just using just a regular target. After you have this set up, the next thing you want to do is you want to verify, does the RAID controller, is it seeing it as a pass-through device? Because what we want to do is make sure VMware is not controlling the RAID controller. To do that, we just go right here to Advanced Settings. And here's what you want to be able to see. Now, if you're not seeing it, what you could do is, if this is empty, you just click right here to edit. Now, here are all your devices that could be marked as a pass-through device. Keep in mind, once you enable it, okay, VMware does no longer control it. So this is where the pass-through is very important for you to understand. You want to be able to see your RAID controller right here. So I've enabled it, and what we're going to do is go ahead and just click cancel, because I already got a virtual machine running, because I'm going to show several examples. So this is where you want to make sure that either an Adaptic, a Dell PERC RAID controller, an HP controller, and you want to make sure they're certified by VMware, make sure they're on their hardware compatibility list, and or 3ware or Mega RAID Storage Manager, or the LSI controllers. And once you have this done, the rest gets kind of easy. So let's go take a simple step on just how to create the virtual machine, and then we'll go into the pass-through device. And again, we're not going to be doing raw disk mapping. That's on another webinar. This is where Yana shows the command lines in VMware on how to upload the latest versions and updates and builds from VMware into the command line interface of VMware root access, and also how to create the raw disk mapping. And then also with the caching as well. So you might want to look at that. And before I continue, his webinar is right here on our website. If you go to Support, Webcast and Videos, and in there you want to look for the one that is back in April 3rd, and here he has where he talks about using the host cache configuration and the raw device mapping. So there's two different versions here. So we're just going to do the regular pass-through device, which many have just asked for, and here's what we're going to demonstrate. All right, so we're going to create our DSS virtual machine as a virtual storage appliance. So what we want to do is go right up to our ESX host right here, which I show as 1.30. Go to New Virtual Machine. I usually go to Custom. You could do Typical and make your changes and edit them. Here we'll just go Next, and I'll just go Test for DSS. Now this is where you're going to select your data store where you're going to install DSS onto. We don't recommend that you install it where ESX is installed on. So here ESX is installed on data store 1. We don't want to install DSS on that. You will get some errors. You'll get some conflicts, and so it's not worth troubleshooting with that. You're better off just adding another SSD drive dedicated for the data store, and or using another iSCSI target. Here I just created, that's my iSCSI target. I'll go to next. I'll select the default for virtual machine version 8. And here I'm going to select Linux. And as we scroll down, we'll take other 2.6.x Linux 64-bit mode. Why? Well, DSS V7 defaults in 64-bit mode. If you need 32-bit mode, which is very highly unlikely, especially in today's technology, you will need DSS V6. All right, let's go to next. For this demo purposes, I'm just really going to need just one virtual socket and core, so we'll just leave that as is for the defaults. Typically, if you're going to install DSS and fully use it as a virtual storage appliance, you'd probably want to add more than 1 gig. Preferred, especially if there's going to be a lot of functionality, you might want to increase that to 4 gig. But for this purpose, we'll just go ahead and leave it at 1 gig. Now you come to decide how many NICs you're actually going to need. You know, for replication, you're going to need more than one. If you're going to be able to do some other functions or static routing for maybe your NAS functions, then you might want to add more NICs. In this case, we'll just need one. You also want to select the VMX Net3 driver. This is a little bit more faster than the regular Intel E1000 that's built in the ESX. So we kind of recommend that. You don't want to use, here is the SCSI controller. The default is an LSI logic parallel. You're better off using the LSI SAS logic or the VMware virtual because you're going to get better performance on it. So here we're just going to select the LSI logic SAS, and we'll keep the default, so I'm just creating a new virtual disk. DSS, really, it needs a minimum of 2 gig. Any more is really not necessary. Here the default is 16. I recommend just taking 2, and it doesn't matter if you, depending on which disk provisioning you use, so we'll just leave the default for lazy zero on thick provisioning. And of course we'll take the defaults here, and we're done. Now what we're going to do is, here's our virtual machine on the left, and we're going to right click on it, and we want to edit settings. This is where we're going to need to change the CD DVD drive 1, because we want to be able to point the datastore ISO file where to get it. This is going to be located, if you remember in the beginning, where we have it installed on the datastore where ESX is installed on, or you can create an NFS share that I did. We'll just take my NFS share, and here's my latest build. Now we want to be able to connect on power on. Okay, so at this point we can also at the same time add the PCI device for the pass-through. The only thing is if I do that, I've already got one running here. If you see DSS V7, the A version that I got on there. If I do that, you're going to get an error if you try to start DSS. So what will happen is, let's just go ahead just so that way you could see what's happening. Keep in mind that DSS V7A that's sitting up on the top left there, it's already running the pass-through device. So it's already owning it. And if you're going to need another device, you're going to have to install another RAID controller or another device that you're using for pass-through to be able to use it for multiple VSAs. So here again, it's selecting the 3-where, and if I select next, finish, and then of course I'm showing that I made these 2 updates in bold, as you could see. Okay, so now we're pretty much done, and we can go ahead and power it on, and you'll see what happens. And that's what you'll get. So you won't be able to install DSS if you've already have another virtual machine using that pass-through device. As it states, the device is already in use. Now, what I noticed when I played around with it is okay, I want to remove it. Well, very simply, you just go back to edit your virtual machines, remove, and say okay. Now we'll go ahead and power it on. And as you can see, the installation begins. So here you want to run software installer, and you remember we carved out that 2 gig from that data store, and this is where we're going to want to install the DSS onto. And it takes a second. What's happening right now, maybe we can scroll over, so that way in case you're saying, is it really working, you kind of want to scroll down, you'll see that it's loading. And so it's pulling the ISO file from the NFS share that I have. And of course now it loads. Now what's happening here is that it goes pretty quickly. So when you install DSS V7 or V6, it doesn't take long, to maybe at the most a few minutes, and you're up and running. So once we pass this through up to 100%, I'm going to go through real quickly on how to install DSS. So now we're at the screen where we want to accept the license agreement, and there is our 2 gig volume that we carved out from our data store. That was our iSCSI target from another DSS server. So I'm going to select, go ahead and install. Here it's checking the source files, and then it'll begin the installation. And so you'll see how quick it's completed. And there's copying the files. And then pretty much what you'll see after this is that it will ask you to shut down or restart. And in this case, we'll go ahead and do a shutdown. You know what? Let's change it up here. Let's just do a reboot so that way you could see when you are using the DSS is that I want you to see if you select a trial version, or you want to enter the product key, or if you want to use DSS version light. Here we'll just go ahead and run it and let it drive through and let that cook in the oven. So this is loading up DSS V7 right now, and keep in mind that I do have some IP addresses that are on the V7s on the left, and so you want to make sure that you don't have an IP conflict, because DSS V7, V6, even V5, they all default to 192.168.0.220. Okay, so we'll let this come up, and I'll let you experience that in a few minutes. Let's go to a virtual machine that does have the pass-through enabled. If we look here, again, I edit the settings. I see that I have the 3ware 9690 SA. It's being used. Now we're going to access the GUI. And by the way, if you want to see in the console, here we'll show you. DSS is loading. Let's go to V7A. Sometimes it sticks. Sometimes I also go like through open console screen and kind of force it. There you go. So this is the one that has the pass-through device. If I do a Control H for hardware, we will see that the 3ware is in the DSS virtual machine, and here you can see the PCI device. Now let's access the GUI on the virtual machine. So we have this set at the second NIC ETH1. I have it set for 1.222.222. So we'll go ahead and close this out. And we'll go ahead to right here. You'll see I got 1.222. And let's see if our 3ware RAID controller is in there. So what we want to go to is you go to Setup, Hardware RAID, and here we see the 3ware Utility Manager. So all we have to do is click on the 3DM tool. Now in LSI you would have that built in into the DSS, and I can show you what it'll look like for LSI. If we take this server that I have that is not a virtual machine, your LSI would look something similar to this. So you'll be able to go ahead and configure your RAID controller right away using the LSI. So it's a preference. If you have Adaptic, you'll be using the Mega RAID Storage Manager. But if you had an LSI, this is what it would look on DSS V6 or V7 that you can configure your RAID controller. Okay, so let's go to our 3ware management tool. We want to select Administrator. The default password for 3ware is 3WARE, 3ware. Now, in some cases, 3ware, to be able to get onto this, is that you need to set your time on the DSS. So make sure your time is accurate or you'll get like a cookies error. Here now we're into the controller. If we go to the controller settings, I can set it for performance or balance or protection. This is where you want to really set for your battery backup unit. For now, I'm just going to set it for performance and just leave the defaults. And here, if I need to configure the RAID array, I've already done so to save time for this webinar. Just create a RAID 0 on some SAS drives, which gives me about 260 gig. So here you can delete, manage your controller, so that way you can utilize it for the DSS V6 or V7 in the volume group manager. And that's where we're going to go now. So let's go back to our virtual machine that we've created that has the pass-through device. As you can see, it's working. And we'll go to configuration, volume manager, volume groups. Here's where you're going to be able to see this is the pass-through device. It's presenting the RAID array from the three-way RAID controller. Now this unit is available for me to go ahead and format real quickly. It's just formatting a file system. And so this could be 20 terabytes in essence. You can have a JBOD inside the ESX server that if you have a SAS expander port on your LSI or three-way adaptive RAID controller, a RICA, then you would be able to go ahead and configure the rest for more volumes. So here the unit will be available for you to use. Now before we really want to format it, and I didn't want to go completely do that because I want to show you something, is what you want to do is you want to be able to test your RAID array. And a lot of times a lot of engineers do this. It's a real unique way of understanding when you created your RAID array what stripe size you are going to use. Typically I like to use a 256K or more depending on your environment. So here looks like we got a question. Somebody's asking, does the DSS Lite version support this? No, it doesn't. The Lite version does not support RAID controller's access, although you can use the BIOS before you boot up on the Lite, but you won't have this functionality on the Lite versions. Also, you don't have 10 gig E or fiber channel functionality, but you do have multiple NIC support, so it's there for you. All right, so what we want to do is be able to go back. I'm using PuTTY, which to enable this, you just use the remote console access in DSS. To set that, let me show you before I go into that. So if we go to Setup, Administrator Settings, and here if you scroll down, you select Remote Console Access. If you're very restrictive, you can set Allow IP addresses. Default port is 22,222, and of course you set your password, and then use PuTTY to log in. The username is CLI when you log in, and of course you set your password. If I were to go to Control-Alt-W, and we'll set our password, here you'll see right here in System Benchmarks. This tool will give you some disk performance tests, so you want to do this before you format it. Here we'll go select the read test and use the space bar to select the unit. And it takes about a second, and here you're getting a performance value. So this is your read test. If I were to format that volume and make it a volume group, as it's stated right here in configuration, volume groups, volume manager, if this is already in use and it's presenting itself as a volume group, you will not be able to do the next test, which is going to be the write test. So it's a good practice to do this, and that way you could test different RAID sets. So you could test your RAID 6, you could try your RAID 5s and RAID 10s and your different stripe sizes. And make sure you enable your, for LSI, your read and cache policies set properly, along with Adaptive and the rest of them. So here we'll select the write test, hitting spacebar, and of course it sees the unit available. Again, if you format it and you create a volume group, it will not present itself as available. And of course we'll give you a warning message because writing, we do that to protect the data, so that's why we don't even allow you to do it. Here you're seeing decent enough performance for that RAID 0 though. This is where you really want to test multiple RAID arrays in your environment and then be able to use IO meter to even further test once you created your volume group. And that's pretty much it. So I just wanted to express that, oh, there's some questions that we had on just from the cues that we get in support. Is let's say I have this virtual machine running using the pass-through device, and I already have a DSS and I want to be able to share the pass-through device. Can I do it if I were to disable this on the fly? Well, you really want to do that unless you're testing. If I were to remove this, I can't. It won't allow you. So I will have to drop down the system to be able to use it. Real quick way, if I just do Control-K, shut down the system on this virtual machine. Now while he's shutting down, we'll just give him a second. And this one, let's look at the edit to settings. Okay, he doesn't have it in there. So we'll go ahead and add him in there. PCI device. We'll select the throughware. And now we've added it. Now this virtual machine is down. And so we'll power on the next one. I had a situation where we were putting multiple controllers to see how it would work. We had some really good results. It was interesting that we took an Array array controller and this threeware and put them together and was able to do internal replications using the data replication. It was kind of interesting. But if you're doing 2 ESX hosts and you have a virtual appliance as a DSS V7 and on another ESX host and virtual appliance for another DSS V7 with the storage internally, in many cases, yes, it could save you costs on the hardware, additional hardware. You're using the existing processor and memory on the ESX, so you kind of consolidate your footprint. That's pretty much it, and hopefully that helps everybody. Oh, maybe I should show one more thing. Well, obviously you're seeing this up. Let me show you when it boots up that I'm able to switch the pass-through device over to this one, and we'll give that one a chance. And also at the same time, for this one that we installed, just to show you at the end, in case you need to see once you're up and running what you would need to do. Again, there's your default IP address. I think I'm going to go ahead and change it just so that way you can see if your network is a different network. Here it defaults to 0 on the first NIC, and we only installed one NIC on this one. So mine's a 3rd octet .1 here. I'm just going to set this to 24 and we'll just go ahead and apply it. Alright, now we'll exit. Now let's go to Firefox and see if we can pull them up. So that was 24 on the 4th octet, and here DSS is loaded. Alright, when you first install DSS, you're presented with a product key option. Here, if you wanted to get the free version, which is a 2 terabyte, you would click on this. It would take you and ask you to go ahead and fill out some information, and that way we can present you with a product key. If you were going to do the trial version gives you 60 days. It gives you everything you could possibly want. So there's no other keys you would need. It comes with the active-active, comes with the active-passive. It's unlimited, so if you have 60 terabytes, don't worry about it. It comes full, even if you had a petabyte. So you want to enter your IP address, your email address, and then it would email you back a link to get your product key, and you would enter it right here again. Or if you already been testing it, you installed it, and you already purchased the product key, you would enter it right here, and immediately that takes you right into the DSS GUI to start your configuration, or you can cancel out of it. So now what we want to do is verify that our pass-through that on DSS V7B is loaded. Okay, so now it's loaded. It looks like 4th octet on that is 223. So let's go to 223. And we'll log in. And these are trial versions. I just basically entered the key from. You'll notice them, they're all pretty much trial. So it's pretty quick when that email comes to you. It happens instantly, so you should not be waiting. So these are all my trial keys, and they're all different depending upon the system, the setup. Not one of them is universal, so keep that in mind. Here, let's go look and see if the pass-through works again. If we go to Setup, Hardware RAID, there's the 3-ware. So it picks it right up. Does it pick it up also in the Volume Manager? Yes. So you could see how useful that could be in certain cases. Well, I hope I fulfilled everybody's needs and information on this. Thank you for showing up. One more thing is that these videos are recorded, and as it is now, and we store them here. Another good video to watch that's part of this, it talks about the VMX NIC drivers, also PCI direct path devices versus a raw device mapping, and the caching that's in VMware. Thank you, everybody. Take care. See you next time.